If you're having a hard time finding teachers to work in your school or district, you are not alone.
And then when we start talking about some of our harder to fill positions, math or science or special education, we might be lucky to only get 4 or 5 applicants for a position, and that's across the board. Then when we start talking about, well, what about applicants who, diversify our workforce for race or ethnicity, gender, first-time college attendees, things like that, it makes those pools even smaller.
It's a problem that is prevalent in many, many places all over the country. Today, we're speaking with one school district that's looking inward to find aspiring teachers.
We've been working with our current high school teaching staff to identify potential students with, some of the characteristics that we'd like to see in a quality teacher.
Specifically, they're trying to make sure that their teachers match the diversity of their student body. And you know what? It's working.
The first year when we kicked this program off, our diversity hiring went through the roof in terms of results. And we hadn't yet graduated anyone through either of our programs. And I really attribute that to that word of mouth out in the community that, wow, something's different here this year. And I don't know what it is, but I like it.
From Frontline Education, you're listening to Field Trip. Today we're speaking with Jason Olson, Director of Human Resources at Verona Area School District. Jason, it's good to talk to you.
Hey, it's good to talk to you.
Verona Area School District is just outside of Madison, Wisconsin. They have about 5,600 students. 30% are students of color, and 20% speak Spanish as their first language. I asked Jason to talk about their reasons for wanting a teacher workforce that reflects the makeup of their student body.
I think a couple reasons. One is the research tends to point towards better outcomes for children of color when there's more role models that look like them, sound like them, talk like them in the classroom. And it's really also something that we hear from students themselves when we do like perception surveys and focus groups and things like that, our students of color wish they had more teachers who look like them.
Even though students are coming from a variety of different backgrounds and socioeconomic circles, Jason said that it's easy to overlook some of the issues that minority students face.
I mean, just from kind of a base level, there's just so many things that majority students and majority adults, staff members can oftentimes take for granted. That when we talk to our students of color, they point some of those things out. Obviously the language barrier is a first and foremost one for a good chunk of our students. And, we've heard stories of our students who are incredibly bright and knowledgeable being put into remedial classes because they don't know English as well as they should. And so that's, just an example of where some of the systems that we've built in the past have been letting some of our students down. And I guess we've kind of got sick of just admiring the problem, if you will, and looking at the data each year on whatever the measure is, and saying, oh yeah, there's a gap, there's a problem, whatever. And we just committed to trying to do something different to move the needle and to make a positive impact on those students.
Would you say that historically your workforce has or has not matched your student population then?
Yeah, it really hasn't matched our population. It may have matched our population 30 years ago. Being on the we're about 5 miles out of the former city limits of Madison, Wisconsin. So back in the day, we were a farming community, and then it slowly became a more suburban and affluent community. And then also part of our district is hooked into some of the neighborhoods that are probably some of the lowest socioeconomic neighborhoods in our county. And so as different demographics have risen and fallen in our school district, we've seen some of those different changes.
I have a statistic here in front of me that I believe you gave me saying that while your student body might be 30+% students of color, perhaps only around 4% of your teachers would fit the same description. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I mean, and that was even just up to a few years ago. Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about the realities that school districts are facing when it comes to finding teachers. As we talk about recruiting teachers and building up the workforce at Verona, what other factors are making it challenging for you?
Well, I think there's a couple at play here. One is just on a nationwide level, some demographic numbers are biting a lot of employers in a challenging way as more and more baby boomers exit the workforce. The generations that are succeeding them just don't have the numbers and sheer numbers that generation had. Certainly in a good, some would say exceptional economy, people have their pick of job opportunities, and unfortunately, sometimes that means that teaching drops down on the list. And then, one thing that's a bit more local to Wisconsin has been some changes at the state level in terms of laws and collective bargaining rights and privileges and things like that also may have contributed to, declines in teacher preparation programs throughout the state.
Are you saying that there is not enough of a pipeline to fill the positions that you're going to need to fill? Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Where we once had 200 or 300 applicants for every elementary teacher opening, now it's more like 50 or 60, and that's still a good number. But, I mean, just from a comparative basis, that number is significantly less. And then when we start talking about some of our harder-to-fill positions, math or science or special education, we might be lucky to only get 4 or 5 applicants for a position, and that's across the board. Then when we start talking about, well, what about applicants who, diversify our workforce for race or ethnicity, gender, first-time college attendees, things like that, it makes those pools even smaller.
So you've begun something pretty interesting here. I know you've begun a Grow Your Own Teachers program. Whose idea was that?
Well, it was something that I think that we came together on as an administrative team. I had done some research on the topic, and seemed like there was some interest in this across the United States. And the more I researched about it, the fact of the matter is that a vast majority of teachers who are employed by a public school system went to their own high school within like an hour's drive of where they work now. So focusing in on that local, immediate, personal kind of recruitment base just really made a lot of sense for us.
Tell me about what the program looks like. When we say grow your own, what does that mean? What are you doing in order to build up a pipeline of people who may want to teach at Verona Area School District?
Yeah, I mean, we really have it set up as a two-prong approach. The first prong that we looked at is trying to identify support staff who do not yet have a teaching certification, but might otherwise be qualified for the role. A lot of times we would find support staff who maybe already have a 4-year degree, either in education and didn't get certified, or even in another discipline, but they found out after working with kids for a while that they really have a heart for it. And so that was kind of what we considered the low-hanging fruit, where we were able to put out a recruitment effort to our internal staff, go through a selection process, and then, with that group of support staff, again, primarily who already had a bachelor's degree, it was just a matter of getting them in an alternative teacher certification program, nights and weekends and things like that, in 18 months, and we had a good group of teachers ready to go. The other prong of our approach was a little bit more long-term, but probably one that we hope will have deeper and longer-lasting traction, and that's with our own students. So we've been working with our current high school teaching staff to identify potential students with, some of the characteristics that we'd like to see in a quality teacher, and then actively soliciting them as part of a recruitment process, in addition to, just doing a blanket mass mailing to all of our juniors and seniors to identify, this opportunity.
As we think about these high school students that you're looking at and saying that you may be a great fit for teaching in this school district, what are the kinds of things that you offer to them who are interested in the program, and then what do you get in return?
Yeah, you bet. I think that really goes to the heart of the opportunity and the value proposition. What we offer, we've been fortunate enough to partner with a local college that, has a pretty pricey yearly tuition as a private institution, but they've been seeking to diversify their student body. And through a partnership, they reduce their tuition by about a third, and their financial aid would cover about a third of the students' tuition and grants and internal scholarships. And then we'd pick up the other third. So we could talk to students about an opportunity for them to have a fully paid bachelor's degree from a tuition standpoint at a pretty quality institution and walk away with a teacher certification. And then in exchange for that, we ask that they come back and teach with us for 4 years afterwards, kind of a year-for-year kind of exchange, and then we'd forgive the money that we paid towards their tuition.
How many people do you have in the program? I'm listening to you describe this, and I'm thinking that it sounds fairly costly.
Well, it's not cheap, but it's there's also a cost to turnover. There's also a cost to students who we're not doing as well as we can. So we've got typically about 2 students enrolled in the program for each year. So a new cohort kind of each year. Each year's cost is around $10,000 per student. So, for $20,000 and per year, and then over time that builds up to where we've got maybe $80,000 or $100,000 of ongoing exposure. We've got anywhere from 2 to 8 students in the pipeline.
Tell me about what the selection process looks like as you look at your student body and try to identify people who might be a good fit. Do you have a higher number of students competing for these slots? How do you identify the ones that you think, hey, we really want to invest in you through this program?
Yeah, we've the interest in the program has grown slowly, but surely. And that word of mouth and culture, I can't emphasize that enough as really the leading edge in terms of your recruitment efforts. We've been able to interview over the past several years basically all students who've applied for the program. So we haven't had super significant turnout, maybe 10 or 15 students every year, and we're graduating classes of around 400 or so each year, something like that, maybe 450. So again, we're not talking about super huge numbers, but a lot of the process that we do in terms of assessing potential students for the program looks a lot like our interview process for teachers. We really work hard to make sure that we have a balanced interview team in terms of race, ethnicity, and gender, people who are excited and passionate about the work as well. And then we actually have our students answer the same 10 or 15 screener questions that we use for our teacher candidates. And what's nice about that is that those questions aren't as focused on, lesson planning and grade books and, curriculum, setup and things like that. We figure we can kind of teach people about that. What we can't teach them about is some of the things that are born and early formed in terms of conflict resolution, conflict de-escalation, race relations, advocacy for students, standing up to bullying, things like that we find that anyone can have some of those experiences growing up if they've had that particular alignment of their interests and beliefs all along.
What are the key attributes of both students and support staff that you look for as you try to identify who to bring into this program?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we really try and be intentional about what we're looking for to allow people to self-select for the program. Because the last thing we want, either for this program or for other vacancies that we have in our school district, is to not have a good fit. And so some of the things that we talk pretty openly about that we're looking for are people who are flexible, they're adaptable, they're committed, they've got that grit about them, they can operate in turbulent and ambiguous situations. They keep going when the going gets tough, in other words. They've got a positive attitude, they're problem solvers. They've got a growth mindset. They see the positives in every child, and they really believe that they are the biggest determinant in that child's success. Instead of, well, if the parents were this, or if the kids were this, or whatever, it's like, no, what can I do as an educator to help this child learn and grow? They focus a lot on equity. They understand that one person's lens through life may not be another person's, and we really try and emphasize that in both our recruiting and hiring, but also in our practice. And then we really want people who are learner-centered, really believe in building relationships versus compliance, and want to help kids in a very personalized way to learn and grow.
So after you did the research before you got this program up and running, how did you get it up and running? What steps did you have to take, whether it was with board policy, with budget, with getting people on board? How did you just get this ball rolling?
Well, yeah, great question. A lot of it, anytime you've got a change or a initiative, things that you're trying to put in place in an organization, it starts at the top. And we were very fortunate all along to have the support both of our superintendent, my superintendent, my boss, and then also the school board, the Board of Education. So, and by that support, I mean things like modifying some of our policies to provide for this program, but also even beyond that, to create some more flexibility in our recruitment and hiring practices, to give us the authority that, boy, if we see a really exceptional candidate and we want to try and hire that person, we don't have to jump through the hoops of doing a posting and posting a position, going through this big screening and interview process. If they've got some good credentials and someone we want to bring on board, we have more authority now to make those things happen than we did in the past. The other big change and kind of startup thing was just setting the money aside for this, taking money out of our operating budget, like I said, about $100,000 a year, to say that, we're going to make this money available for our Grow Your Own program. And a lot of times people say, well, where would we find the money? I mean, it's a great idea, but where would we find the money? And it's like, well, we got to remember that budgeting is all about priorities. And so we really looked at this as a priority, and that's why we basically found money and either didn't fund other things or took money away from other things to make this happen.
Scale of 1 to 10, how difficult was it to sell that priority?
It was not that difficult, We're really fortunate to live in an area that really understands the value of diversity and equity and supports that. So 4,
That's great.
Most of the challenges just were my own in terms of finding time on the calendar and trying to figure out a path that I hadn't been down before.
So once you have it up and running, of course, now you have to get the word out. How did you do that? How did you make this known to the people that you wanted to get it in front of? Yep.
Again, really focused in on that local, immediate, personal connection. Obviously we know our employees, we know their home address, we can send a letter to their house. We know our students, we can send a letter to their house. But more importantly, we really tried to look at multiple modes of communication and connection by linking up with kind of key communicators in our Latino community, in our African American community, in our Hmong community, and trying to put ourselves in meetings and events and situations where we're talking to individuals in our community, either as employees or students or parents, who have that affinity for some of those things that we're looking for, and we start telling our story. And one of the things we found is that even the first year when we kicked this program off, our diversity hiring went through the roof in terms of results. And we hadn't yet graduated anyone through either of our programs. And I really attribute that to that word of mouth out in the community that, wow, something's different here this year, and I don't know what it is, but I like it. And so that to me was like kind of that curb cut effect where, if you do something good for one particular group of people, what do you know? It ends up being a good thing for everybody.
You're saying that people heard that you were doing a Grow Your Own Teacher program in order to intentionally raise the level of diversity in your teacher workforce, and as a result, you were able to hire more diverse teachers that didn't come through that program. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Absolutely, 110%. Yeah. I think, like I said, that when we kicked this program off, the first couple of years, we darn near doubled the diversity of our workforce, our teacher workforce, and our program hadn't even been kicking out graduates yet. But it was all because of that word of mouth and that communication that, wow, something is different here.
Did you hear anyone say anything to you in particular about that? What kinds of things did people say when you spoke with them about it?
Well, I think that what I heard was that people appreciated the honesty of saying that, what we've been doing in the past for our students of color in particular hasn't been working very well. And owning up to that and being humble enough to kind of put that out there, I think, resonated with a lot of people. And also acknowledging the fact that, there is an important connection between students of color and teachers of color. And making that a priority, I think, kind of elevated that with a lot of our applicants, kind of elevated their thought of us as a district and also as an employer.
Let's say I'm in high school and I'm interested in this program. What does the process entail? If I were in one of your classrooms and I was saying, I would really like to be involved in this Grow Your Own Teacher program, I might like to come back here to Verona to teach at some point, what would it look like from my perspective?
Yeah, we tried to put in as few barriers in the process as possible. And so we tried to keep it really simple. Things like, hey, send us your name and address and what year in school you are and what's your GPA nowadays and what appeals to you about the program. Just a few short question and answer kind of things. Question about, what are some things you've done in the past to reduce race relations. And so just a couple, 3 questions and send that to our attention. And we would convene a panel of people to interview people who applied.
And right now you said roughly 8 to 10 people working through the program. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the kind of the capacity of our program at any one time. As you know, not everyone who starts off in college ends up graduating from college, and so we learned a few things along the way, and actually restructured some of the financial pieces of it so that there was more onus on the college to help students have a successful freshman year. So right now, to answer your question, I think we've got 5 students in the program who are former high school graduates of our system. And the first one will be graduating in December of next year in special education.
So and that person will then take a role at your school district in a special education role?
Correct. Yep.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about what you've learned as you've started this all. As you look back on the past several years since you first began, what have you learned? What are the things that you would change or do the same?
Well, some of the things that we've learned along the way is the importance of really understanding what's required for different colleges from an admission standpoint and trying to involve the colleges that we've partnered with sooner rather than later. I know one of the things that our primary college learned along the way is they've restructured their student advising program so that they have one advisor that our Grow Your Own students work with from the time that they're juniors or seniors in high school all the way on through until when they graduate with their education degree. We've learned a lot about just some of the different barriers that come along the way. I mean, I mentioned before that it was fairly easy to get this program up and going. What's not been so easy is working through just a lot of different cross currents and perceptions along the way, from current staff, from some in the community, in terms of questions. And we talked about a term in terms of opportunity hoarding, that, well, gosh, if some students get this opportunity, how will that affect my child? And so, we know that that's an issue. In some way, it's just human nature to think about, one's own child. So those are things that we've learned along the way. It's a lot of work, too. That's the other side of the coin. It's like we put this new program in place without any additional staff. And it takes a lot of time. A lot of this turns into kind of a one-off, one-by-one situation, because each kid's story is so much different. Each staff member's story is different in terms of their background and where they're trying to go career-wise.
Would you do it again?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. It goes back to the old saying, if you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you always got. And that's exactly where we were. And, I feel like we've been taking some positive steps. Again, we don't have all the answers, but we're working down that equity path. And it was really rewarding for me just on a personal level. My own children attend our school district here, and it was neat when our first cohort of Grow Your Own staff members entered the workforce. That first year, one of them was my daughter's sixth grade teacher. And so that to me was kind of, again, just kind of a manifestation of that local, immediate, and personal connection that we're all about.
Well, we have been speaking with Jason Olson, Director of Human Resources at Verona Area School District outside of Madison, Wisconsin, and he's been talking to us about a Grow Your Own Teacher program that they're doing. Jason, thank you for sharing your work here with us today.
Oh, thank you.
Does your school system have trouble filling all of its vacancies for teaching positions? If so, take a moment and check out our field guide to recruiting millennial teachers. You'll read about key characteristics of this generation, how to effectively market your school district to prospective teachers, and strategies for enriching your applicant pool through online recruiting. It's on our website. Visit frontlineeducation.com/fieldtrippodcast and click on the Resource Center. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to subscribe. You'll find new episodes when they're released every other Friday. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. Field Trip is a podcast from Frontline Education, home of Frontline Recruiting and Hiring, a software solution designed to help you proactively recruit more applicants and quickly identify the best candidates and get them up to speed. For Frontline Education, I'm Ryan Estes. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.